Ladies and gentlemen, founder and director Mitchell Plockington. How are we?
Good, mate. Yeah, it's Pocklington.
Pocklington.
My wife doesn't like that name either.
Oh, really? Welcome to the Buyer's Insight podcast. So, for those listening that don't know, what is Mitconbuild?
So Mitcon started, I guess, as most construction businesses do. In the back of the study, poked in one of the spare bedrooms. And it was, I guess, something I'd wanted to achieve for a while, but I sort of launched that on the back of obviously my apprenticeship and starting that business. I built the first build I did was I built my one of my parents' houses and hooked into that. So yeah, it's
Was that in Manly?
Nah, that was out in Park Ridge, so in a new estate. It was a low set, sort of, predominantly straightforward style build. But it was a big learning curve.
Yeah.
Building, your first project, building a brand new home. So
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was a good one.
And so you're a builder and developer, right? So you build for clients and then you also do projects for yourself as well, right?
Yeah, so sort of, it's probably more recently we've moved into doing our own developments. Previously, we had done a lot of client projects. I guess that's how we built our business up. But we're pretty fortunate that we managed to, do a number of principal place of resident builds and sell them. And obviously, we did quite well on some of them throughout COVID.
Yeah.
So that's set us up to be able to move forward now and do our own developments.
Right.
Which is good. We can make decisions quicker and get things designed quicker and ultimately move to site quicker and then get them on the market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. And so I just want to rewind a little bit to where you grew up and, what brought you into the industry and, all the way to where you are today.
Yeah, so I guess I grew up on the south side in Logan from a predominantly lower socio-economic community, working class family. Mum worked quite hard, worked a few jobs. My father had a motorbike business in Moss Street.
Yep.
So I came from a predominantly, I guess, lower class and working class family. I wanted to be a carpenter all throughout school. I never got that opportunity, so I sought out the closest thing I could get, which was a cabinet making apprenticeship.
All right, so you started there.
So I started as a cabinet maker, I think from about late grade 9, early grade 10, I did a cabinet making apprenticeship.
Yeah.
I did that for about 2 or 3 years. And then turned up at work one day and they'd shut down shop. They
closed down.
They'd gone insolvent, or closed the shop. So I rang my mate and I said, hey, like, where is everyone? What's going on? And he said, didn't they tell you on Friday? Like, they're done, they're gone.
Right. Shit.
So no one told me, the school-based apprentice. So after that, I sort of, I floated around a bit with work. Finished up school and I found myself studying surveying.
Yeah.
So I did surveying for 3 years after that. I did some time on the APLNG pipeline and studied surveying for about 12 to 18 months.
That would be quite handy, like we're coming into developments and stuff, right?
100%. Even like establishing a site, like I have an understanding of, boundaries, heights, levels.
Yeah, exactly.
So that has been beneficial for us to date. But, after that, I sort of, as a lot of young guys do, I went off and lived overseas for 6 or 7 months in Canada. And that was,
ski season.
Yeah, it was awesome. So probably one of the best experiences I did at that age. It just set me up, with a lot of life skills. And then I came back and sort of decided I need to sort myself out. And, I jumped back into carpentry and finished my apprenticeship there and, then started contracting and learning and supervising and learning the ropes from there. So
yeah, right, okay. And so now that you're doing your own projects and you also do projects for other clients, when you're assessing a site, what is some of the main points that you look out for?
So initially, with the site you got us recently, we had a specific brief. I needed to have a number of comparable sales in that pocket. you know, ideally the site we were after in that particular pocket needed to have, you know, city views, clean services, you know, not too much fall, although like a slope site doesn't really phase us. But yeah, it was, I guess it was quite difficult. Probably took us 6 months to secure that site. So yeah, it is, you know, I feel like you've really got to find your model or your niche or what you're after, and try and stick to your guns. Because if you know what you're looking for, you can really do an assessment on it and
quick
in 5 minutes and figure out if it stacks or not.
And it's really important in a market like today to be able to act quickly, right, on a site.
100%. I don't know how many deals I tried to, you know, negotiate some better terms, and there was no budging. So it was
it's really tough out there.
We you know, I was pretty stoked though, to be honest, like a you know, 90-day settlement, and you know, some negotiation there on deposits and things like that. Like, you know, it does go a long way, but yeah, it is quite competitive at the moment. There are a lot of developers, you know, seeking out sites, to the point I've even seen local real estate agents listing sites with favourable you know, development terms in them. Like even on the market, you know. For example, there was another site in Camp Hill that hit the market, and it had advertised 90-day settlement, you know, and a few other terms in there that were favourable to a developer. So it's definitely a competitive market at the moment.
And so for the viewers, talk us through what some of the advantages are of getting a delayed settlement like that.
So with a delayed settlement, ideally, I didn't want a site that needed a development application. However, a lot of people may know in Brisbane, you know, pockets are heavily laid with the traditional building character overlay. So the particular site we were fortunate enough to secure had the traditional building character overlay, so that will require a development application. But, you know, like we just had a pre-46 property, one of our other projects, from design, from purchase or contract signing to commencement on site was about 4 months, a little over 4 months. And that was a pretty scrutinised DA process as well. So ideally having that additional time frame can, you know, save you thousands of dollars in holding costs, you know, especially if you're looking at you know, private or commercial finance, which the rates can be, you know, significantly higher. So just having that, you know, little bit of extra time can enable us to get on site, you know, get our consultants in there and start that design process.
And so lay out the steps that you would take after you say get a contract on a property, you've secured it, you're unconditional. What are the next steps as a developer or as a builder that you would take to get that site ready for build?
So we've done a lot of assistance in the way as being engaged as a consultant with clients in the past. So I guess the process is quite similar to any, you know, client engaging, you know, consultants separately. You know, you might have a town planner, a surveyor, a designer, but we have those relationships that we've had with those sorts of consultants for a long period of time. So initially, you know, I've gone to auction on a site recently, and I already had my surveyor booked for the next day, my soil tester for the next day. Like I obviously wasn't successful on that particular site, but I'd already had my consultants lined up, ready to go.
So you get a lot of the due diligence done before even acquiring the site.
100%, yeah. So on that particular site, it was an auction. I probably invested over $1,000 on just solicitors because it had a bit of a title messy situation there. So I did a lot of that due diligence and had that done and dusted, knocked out the way. Consultants, you know, some consultants booked tentatively, ready to go.
So you'd run a site past a trusted contact, like a town planner.
For sure.
All those sorts of people like surveyors and stuff like that. You discuss it with them, maybe your design team as well. See what you could sort of fit on there and what would work.
100%. So so with that one recently, you know, like pretty soon after, a few days later, I had my surveyor. Obviously it was tenanted, so I tried to line a lot of those consultants up on the same day. So I had my surveyor hit the ground a few days later. Same day I had the soil tester on there, which gives me an understanding of what ground conditions we're dealing with. So on that particular one, we are going to cut in a little bit with somewhat of a basement. So I wanted to know like whether we're going to be dealing with rock or you know, good soil or bad soil.
And you get that through a geotech report.
Yeah.
Right?
So I've got the bore logs. I know the depths. You know, we've actually got 800 to a meter of good soil. And then we hit bedrock. So
and then it becomes a lot more expensive.
Yeah. So then I need to know with my costings, you know, when I do pull my costings together on that initial design for our valuation, that I'm going to have to, you know, put a lot more cost towards that excavation component.
Do you have like an estimate on say if you were to be cutting down into the soil to what the difference would be once you hit a bedrock?
It's difficult to say because, you know, all soil and ground conditions are different, and you really can't know that until you're on site and actually start.
And you know what it actually is.
But, you know, like Camp Hill is you know, known for rock. So we have done a few projects in Camp Hill. We've done some in Camp Hill where we hit fill and slop, but we have done others where we've hit rock. So I guess you just need to draw a bit on your knowledge and past experience. But that particular one, you know, I think it'll be a good cut because we're not taking too much off, but definitely for getting foundations and services in, we're definitely going to be into rock. But yeah, it's just getting that understanding of the site, a holistic understanding. So, you know, not just, you know, what slopes it is, but knowing what ground conditions we're dealing with, where the services are. That one had a bit of a funny sewer connection. Like there was actually no connection on the plan. Like it showed no connection to the site. But there's a house there, so obviously there is something. But yeah, same day we had the surveyor and geotech on site. I had all the service locator there too. So I like to try and get my service locator and surveyor on site the same day. So then the surveyor can pick up what my locator marks out on the ground.
So they can sort of work together.
Yeah. So if we got gas, Telstra, water, like I know where all those services are coming in. And it also helps with design too, you know, bringing, you know, service locations and meter boxes and things and getting them in the right place. So, it's really trying to, you know, design a site to suit its surroundings and what you have there.
And so the latest site that you have secured is in Camp Hill in the Martha Street precinct. And what can you tell us a little bit about that site? Obviously the city views, you know, it's a decent sized corner site as well in a great pocket of Camp Hill. Surrounded by luxury builds, I'm aware of, you know, $4 and $4.5 million builds that have recently sold in that area. And so what are you planning on doing with that site, and what type of house and style are you planning to go with, or have you not nutted that out yet?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I knew my brief. Like I'm quite up to date with our consultants, architects, real estate agents, interior designers on what like is coming to the market at the moment and even what's being designed. So for that particular pocket and model, like I know at the moment, you know, like a coastal style Mediterranean is quite popular and is doing quite well in the market. So that was, I guess, the thought process behind that particular project. So we are sort of looking at, you know, like I guess it's probably more like a modern contemporary Mediterranean style build. We will have to draw on, I guess, some traditional elements there because it does have the traditional building character overlay. So some cladding, some linear board, things like that to get that through the DA. But yeah, that particular site, obviously, like you mentioned, there are some really good recent sales in that pocket. There's a couple of projects being built at the moment that will come to market, a few that have just hit the market. So yeah, we definitely have those comparables in the, you know, $4 to $4.5 mil.
And so that's what you're going to be aiming for as well with this one? Yeah,
look, I think with those sales in that pocket and the type of home that we will be bringing, we're looking at, you know, about 5 bed, 5 bath, looking at an easy 4-car parking space, basement below with a gym, sauna, you know, a nice big open plan, pool area, and obviously those city views. We have started bulking out the spaces of the home, and the orientation of the site the Tirana Street side does get, that afternoon sun, and we're sort of anticipating, those really awesome sunsets over, Mount Cootha and those city views. So we have tried to orientate as much of that upper level to see those city views.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be able to achieve the master suite and 2 or 3 kids' bedrooms to sort of capture those city views, which will be a big draw card,
Huge.
for that area.
Yeah.
But obviously a huge benefit to have that corner block there, like you mentioned. We have the opportunity to draw on that Martha Street name, which is a big desire in that pocket too. So,
Definitely, yeah. Buyers are always after that.
Yeah, 100%.
That's great. And so, obviously Mediterranean is quite popular at the moment. Are you finding, or are you predicting that this trend will continue throughout 2024 and into the following year, 25?
It's difficult to say. Like I said, there's a lot of architects and interior designers that I do keep up to date with.
Yeah.
And I am seeing a lot of new product being designed and constructed at the moment that does draw on those sorts of inspirations, like your Mediterranean, your earthy palettes, so I am seeing that trend being designed at the moment. So obviously, if it's being designed now, it is likely it will be built.
Yeah.
Especially if it's development projects, that there's a higher chance that they'll be coming to market.
Yeah.
So I do anticipate, the next 12 to 24 months, it's probably a safe bet.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, we did a black kitchen in one of our projects in Manly.
Yeah.
And it went, quite well. It was, a bit of a drawback for some buyers.
Yeah.
But everyone has different tastes and interests,
It's quite popular because that house that you did in Manly was also more of a modern Queenslander, wasn't it?
Yeah. So that one, again, that was actually a pre-1911. So that house was built in, that was actually a renovation. It was built in maybe 1880, 1890s.
So it was a heritage listed.
It wasn't quite heritage. It was just, it had traditional character that we had to maintain.
Yep.
But it was, so we tried to distract a bit from that traditional by going with that modern, dark polished concrete.
Yep.
And that black kitchen. So we tried to mix in that coastal and also blend through.
Yeah, the modern.
But if that was a development, we may not have gone so bold. But, it's hard to say. I've seen a lot of dark and bold projects go to market and do quite well. So
it's getting a really specific buyer, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you go like that way. But whereas if you sort of stick with the coastal Mediterranean at the moment, you're appealing to the majority of buyers.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in that Camp Hill, I feel like a lot of projects are, more traditional, like that coastal traditional kind of look. So, but I think there is a big draw card towards warmer palettes and more earthy tones in properties at the moment. So
definitely.
Yeah.
And so back to the luxury build that you're doing in Camp Hill, what sort of timeline do you think you'll be able to have that complete?
Until I schedule it out, it's difficult to say, but I'm wanting to be somewhat optimistic on the build time frame from settlement to completion and hitting market.
Yep.
I'm hoping for between sort of 11 to 13 months, which I feel is somewhat achievable based on, previous similar projects we've built in the past. We could get something like that built in, between 8 and 12.
Yeah.
Okay. But obviously with COVID, like timeframes had blown out, but that we're sort of on the tail end of that.
Are you finding that supply, like the delays in supply is getting better, or is it sort of the same? Or
on different products, like concrete and steel, for example, like I feel like the commercial market, especially with the Olympics coming, there's a lot of infrastructure and things like that happening. So concrete hasn't stopped with increasing. Steel obviously is the same, but things like roofing and timber and that sort of product has retracted a bit, so it is a bit easier to get. Pricing's a bit more realistic. There's not a lot of that craziness that there was before. Through COVID. So
fair enough. And so obviously you were doing projects throughout COVID, and you said you did quite well off them as well. Throughout that period is sort of when we had a boom, but we also had an increase in costs of materials. Now, how much would you say, as someone that's right there on the front line, did those sort of costs increase by? Was it, say, 10, 20, 30%?
It's difficult to say. I think so I'll just rewind a bit there. Like COVID, it was a hectic and difficult time. Our construction side of the company basically broke even, if not anything, made a little bit of a loss. But we did engage in our own development project throughout that. Which did do quite well. Like anyone who had property or bought property through COVID knows that it, increased, quite hugely. So we probably did, that was probably beneficial for us. Like we've had our foot in the door with property, for a number of years now. I started out with a unit renovation.
All right.
But
where'd you do that?
in Coorparoo,
Oh, yeah.
Macaulay Street in Coorparoo.
Nice.
There was actually a unit in the same complex that came on the market the other week. So
all right.
it was a bit of
They're hot property right now.
it was a bit of nostalgia. But we actually bought that and did a renovation and sold it in the middle of that unit oversupply a number of years back.
Yeah.
It was it was pretty hectic.
Yeah.
But through COVID, I don't know, like we did a project and the cost escalation on that was between 50 to 75 grand, I reckon, on a $800,000 project.
And you were probably on a fixed contract.
So we lost a bit of money on that. We had two projects where we lost money on, and we had a couple of smaller ones that we actually did okay out of because our exposure time frame was a lot less. So those bigger projects that were 10, 12-month builds is where that cost escalation it caught up.
Now, because you were on fixed contracts back then, you have to obviously suck up all the cost of materials there.
Yeah.
Moving forward now, when you take on projects for clients, are you doing cost plus or are you staying with fixed?
So moving forward, we are doing a small client project at the moment, but moving forward, we're going to try and focus predominantly on our own developments.
Yeah.
Obviously, with the experience that we have in construction and the set of consultants and relationships we have, it's easier for us to design and have projects hit the ground quicker.
Yeah.
Whereas with clients, there is an element of emotional, design because it is their own home. So I feel for our business, our better model is to bring finished product to the market.
Yeah.
Because we do have that experience and we can get through them a lot quicker.
Yeah.
So with our own projects, I think moving forward, we will do fixed price contracts. So our build company will be a fixed price, but obviously, we know we have buffer within the development for our build entity. So I think it's difficult. Throughout COVID, banks were really cautious of fixed price. Cost plus contracts.
Yeah.
I think they still are a bit, but it gets to a point. We started provisioning contracts quite heavily through COVID, as you would within what's legal, but you sort of start skirting the lines with if you start provisioning your contract so heavily on a lot of different items, you sort of start leaning towards a cost plus contract anyway. So you may as well just go with cost plus. Yeah. But it's interesting that the small client project we're doing at the moment, they wanted cost plus, but because it was such a small value and the time frame on it was so small, like we were very confident with that build. I sort of said to them, like, look, it's probably more beneficial for you guys to go fixed price because it's less risk for you. A lot of that risk falls on us, and I'm extremely confident with this project.
So because you do that because it's a short in and out project for them, so then you can sort of calculate whether or not prices will increase dramatically in that short period. Yeah,
for sure. We have a lot more security with our suppliers at the moment that pricing isn't fluctuating so quickly on the products on that particular project, and a lot of it is timber construction. Yeah. So I was confident to say, and they were a great, couple. So I said, look, it's personally, I don't feel it's the best contract for you guys to go cost plus.
Yeah.
I'm happy to go fixed price. We have a lot of confidence in it, and they were happy with that, and
Yeah.
so we're on a fixed price. So
Nice. Okay. And so obviously you're still really early on in your journey as a builder and developer. Where do you see, Mitconbuild going, and what other plans do you have for yourself, I guess?
I don't know. That's a
Yeah.
that's a crystal ball,
Yeah.
kind of question.
In an ideal world, I guess.
In an ideal world, like I love building and I love designing. So I guess heavily involved. Well, I try to be with the design process, to the point of shuffling rooms around and moving walls and
So you like the design aspect of it a lot?
yeah, I really enjoy that, and the purchasing and the selling of projects and designing them. So I think I would like to sit in a role as more of the development manager.
Yeah.
And design and
So you like to be a bit more like hands-on with the creative side of
yeah,
the business.
and obviously bringing them to market. I enjoy building, but I think with our build company, I would like to have a bit more of a team in place, whereas I can still oversee it, but it runs itself like a more of a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, definitely.
And that frees up my capacity to sort of be securing sites and
Makes
designing them. Ideally, I'd like to I guess bring creative and a new product to the market.
Yeah.
Where I don't have restrictions on design, where I can sort of design what I want. And,
yeah. And is that why you're sort of leaning into the luxury development a bit more? Is that you can be a bit more creative on what you add in, whether it be a home gym or a spa or all these sorts of luxuries?
Yeah, I guess like with our personal residences, like I have I guess pushed the limit or the boundary a little bit in relation to design. Like the one we have in Manly at the moment, I've done a big curved suspended sort of planner out the front, which, in a development you may get some of that aspect, but it's probably some of the costs involved with that wouldn't really stack up for a development. But, it is something that I really enjoy those finer details and making something, different and looking aesthetically pleasing. So, I really enjoy that process and that part of the design. So, I think.
Okay. And what sort of like importance do you place on the selling agent that sells your properties?
I guess it's difficult. Like in this market and with high-end product, I feel like a selling agent is really beneficial. It's a bit of a funny story, but on that property, that unit we had in Coorparoo, because it was like such an oversupply in the market of units.
Yeah.
There was Coorparoo Square being constructed at the same time.
Right.
And I actually went with one of those agencies where you try and sell your house yourself.
Oh, right.
So
what are those ones called?
Purple something, yeah.
Purple listed yourself. Yeah.
So I actually tried that myself and put on a nice shirt and held a clipboard and waited at an open and had like one group come through, and it was difficult. Like obviously that didn't work out. And we put on an agent. I still remember him to this day, Brad Sissons in Coorparoo there. Yeah. And I grilled him after every open. I said, "How'd we go? What?" Yeah. And he turned up and was super honest. But he got it done. We actually came out of that in the middle of an oversupply units. We made 20 grand on it. Yeah. And my wife lived quite simply for a year at that point in time and saved 20 grand herself. And we combined that and then moved that into our next property in Holland Park. But after that, I think having an agent on board is definitely beneficial. It just separates that that point of connection between the buyer and the seller, which I think is hugely beneficial. It's good with negotiation, because it separates that personal, I guess, interaction there. But I think having a good agent on board is definitely beneficial. But it's a bit of a balance. Like in this market, like a luxury product or a luxury home, if you've got good marketing and it's built well, it does, it will tend to, I guess, promote itself on the market. But definitely having a good agent on board is going to get that deal across the line or extract, the best value from the market that you can get for that home. So it's definitely beneficial having a good agent on board.
And do you place like a lot of importance on, say, staging a property and presenting it correctly as well?
Yeah, definitely for sure. I think staging is hugely beneficial. We staged our last property before we sold it. It was hard because we were living in that. So we were trying to, I got a 4-year-old daughter and, if you've got a beautifully staged home and
you got to clean it up all the time and move the toys.
It's a lot of work. But I think after that, we made a decision and said any home we sell from now on, we're not going to be in it. We're going to move out, leave it staged and just let it run its course.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is definitely beneficial, especially in a high-end, luxury home. To be honest, our last home, a lot of the furniture that we had in it was quite nice, that we'd purchased and sort of furnished ourselves. We actually sold half of that with the home.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely beneficial to have it staged.
Yeah.
For sure.
Nice. Okay. And so if there's any builders or developers out there thinking about entering the industry, are there any, advice that you'd, give them?
I think, I speak to a lot of like young builders or young chippies who are awesome chippies, but, there's no manual or no criteria or information out there for anyone as a carpenter to start a business. You get your carpentry license, you get your builder's license, and then they just let you out into the wild. And I see a lot of young guys who come unstuck with that process, because they really don't know their numbers. I think running a building company, like building's hard, like, as it is, before you even start building for clients, like building
just getting it all right.
100%.
Yeah.
There's so many moving parts. Like in the past couple of years, I've figured out that I've got high functioning ADHD, but I'm very particular. I walk onto a site and I can see problems where they sit. It used to, shit the boys to tears, but
you sort of need that sort of eye though, don't you?
Especially when you're building, if you let one little problem go and it gets too far down the line, and a home's sheeted, like it can create issues later on. But I think the biggest advice I would give to someone trying to enter the building industry as a builder or trying to do their own developments or flips is, know your numbers, know your product, and just back yourself, because there's a lot of opportunities out there, but a lot of people say when people are successful is like, you're so lucky, but I heard a saying a while back is, there's no such thing as luck. Luck is when like opportunity meets preparation. So
exactly.
You need to know your numbers, know your model, back yourself, like have that information before you jump into an opportunity, and when that opportunity comes up, don't hesitate, just jump on it.
Just go for it. Yeah. And would you say a good idea would be to sort of partner, do a JV maybe with someone that's got a little bit of experience or building background? Or
yeah, for sure. Like if you don't have that building knowledge and you're wanting to do like a project, I would definitely say like, combining knowledge is hugely beneficial if you want to try and be successful. And don't be afraid to ask people, everyone's, someone successful has worked there, and learned lessons along the way. Like I've spent, 4 or 5 hours sitting down with, a new builder and just data dumping information, and if it means I can save that young builder like a year of, fumbling through the dark trying to figure out problems, or even a simple thing like the difference between markup and margin. Like I don't know how many times I've explained that to a new builder, but like that can be the huge difference in saving someone $10,000-$20,000 in a financial year. So
yeah, definitely.
Right.
Okay, well that's a good piece of advice. And so when you're mapping out a build, and when it comes to the different trades, I'm guessing you've probably got, a team of trusted contacts. But is there sort of like a system that you place out and obviously book everyone in and advance, but things can be delayed or not be done correctly and things like that. How do you sort of manage all that?
Yeah, so I for the first few years with our business, I would use like a diary or a calendar. But, when we started getting growth with our business, it became too much. So I invested in like a construction software. I initially ran Builder Trend, which is a little bit more complex and costly software.
Yeah.
But it enabled me to schedule out a project. And, I found myself actually finding it as a useful tool to sort of check my timeframes, because I would set templates and know that, like I've got this amount of time, or this should, the frame should take 3 weeks, for example. But, I definitely schedule out all of my projects, even to the extent I scheduled out that Martha Street project, just the preliminary design stage. So we got a 90-day contract there, but I've scheduled out, my design stage, my DA component, my building design component. I've scheduled out that whole time frame because it's quite easy to just, engage someone and let that process run. But then, 2 or 3 weeks down the track, you're 2 weeks past, where you want to be. My designer, I sent him through the schedule, and he said, "Oh, you're putting the pressure on me," you know. But I feel like I really need to schedule projects out, and I find that hugely beneficial. To be organised and scheduled. It is difficult and frustrating with trades and consultants when things push out or move. But it's just being, I guess, flexible and nimble. And, I've been in construction long enough now that it doesn't frustrate me any less, but I have ability to manoeuvre that schedule around. And I also factor in some bigger time frames, or a bit more fudge factor in certain components.
Like after, in between each trade,
you
sort of give a little bit of leeway.
A little bit of buffer there, because I guess from experience and historically, you get to know certain types of trades and how things play out.
Obviously weather is a big factor as well.
We're trying to get a roof on a project today, and obviously with the wind, it's definitely not happening. I don't know if you've ever seen a roof sheet in the wind. It's
it's chaos.
It's like a flying razor blade. So it's difficult. Yeah, especially weather's been a huge one. Past 2 to 3 years, the weather in Brisbane has been
chaos.
Yeah, it's quite unpredictable.
Yeah. And so when it comes to funding these different projects, are you using like commercial finance, private? Are you funding them yourself?
We do, there are a few options there. Projects that we use as a principal place, obviously, it's ideal to get like non-commercial funding, so we can get those cheaper rates. Ideally, we want to try and achieve as much or as a bigger offset account and draw out as much equity as possible from those cheaper rates.
What would you say a commercial rate would be?
At the moment, I'd probably say you're looking at between 10 to 11%.
Yeah.
I'm hoping and I'm anticipating that may start dropping a bit.
Yeah.
I have seen banks, like your big fours, start to offer some better deals and looking at, reducing some rates in anticipation for some rate drops at the end of the year. So I'm hoping those rates might start coming down a bit, which obviously, helps our feasibilities as well. We'd use a mix, but predominantly for our next few development projects, it will be commercial lending. Maybe into 2025, we might start looking more at your big four again. But the only thing with those sorts of lending options is your capital component is significantly
I was going to say, so what's your LVR ratio on the commercial?
We're aiming for a 70% LVR. Generally it's sort of 65% LVR. But I think the type of product we're looking at bringing to the market is, quite a I guess a safer product, or a desired or sought after product, and that's from buyers and lenders as well. So
talk me through how it works in regards to once you acquire the site and then you do the design on the site to acquire the funding for for the actual project itself. So how does that work exactly?
So yeah, that's probably the most stressful time frame right there.
Yeah.
Is you obviously need to get that site or that project design to a point where it is I guess you can get a valuation on it.
Yeah.
So you need to have some pretty good floor plans. Some good elevations and things like that of what you are proposing to bring to the market.
Yeah.
Obviously costings and your schedule of finishes. So
Yeah.
we have a good bank or template of schedule of finishes and costings from previous projects that we can get quite a good estimation on the build.
Yeah.
We will get it out as quick as we can to some suppliers and trades and try and get as accurate as pricing back in. But it is quite a scramble in those weeks and month to pull that information together to get that to the valuer, to try and get that valuation together.
So you basically have to make sure that you've got enough funding to be able to secure and purchase the site, and then get a design done for the site on what it's going to be looking like when it's complete.
Yeah.
And then you take that to the funder. Then they assess it with the FISO and the capital that you've got, and then they basically evaluate it and then give you the thumbs up whether or not they're going to fund it for you.
Yeah, 100%. And it may be a case of like they will fund it at your FISO where it sits, at your resale, proposed resale, or it may be a case of they might come in slightly under, but that just means you need to increase your capital input, to get that deal across the line.
So you're basically saying if the project's going to cost you 3 million and they're only willing to fund 2.8, then you've got to come up with an extra 200 to keep it going.
Yeah, for sure. So you've just got to tip in that bit of extra capital.
Yeah.
It does get quite complex, and it's best to try and get an understanding of that. I've probably spent the last 6 to 12 months running sites. I probably looked at 20 to 30 sites before we secured that one, and running numbers, running deals, pestering brokers to get my knowledge up to scratch. So I knew how we could facilitate that sort of deal. But, it is beneficial because that knowledge will stay there now, throughout our future projects, and down the track we can start looking at better lending options. So
they do say development is a game of finance in its own, which is definitely ringing true to be able to juggle all the different projects you've got going on. And so obviously you're quite active on the south side of the Brown Snake. Have you
big brown
have you thought about going across to the other side?
Look, we did have a number of suburbs on our radar. So, like Ascot, Hamilton, Hendra. Yeah, we love it. It's like by the bayside, it's the biggest marina in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah.
I think personally it's quite undervalued for what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have definitely looked at that northern pocket. There was a street in Hendra. There was a couple of, there's a development happening at the moment, and there was a site next door that was up for sale.
Yeah.
And I inquired with the builder developer next door and just quizzed him on where his resale was going to be and, his purchase price. And I was quite surprised at where that product was sitting, and it was in between the 4 to 5 mil.
Yeah.
Right. So it's, I wasn't aware that there was those sales tucked in away in Hendra there. So we're definitely, those pockets are on our radar.
Yeah.
Camp Hill is obviously a great pocket. Cooperoo.
Yeah.
There are some good sales around there. So
are you starting to consider places like Tarragindi and Holland Park and those as well? Norman Park even?
Yeah, for sure. So Tarragindi has been on our radar. We have had a few sites that we have done feasibilities on in Tarragindi. There's one at the moment that's off market, but we're just waiting on some information to come back. But there are pockets emerging. There's been some good product and good sales in Tarragindi as of recently. But just looking for that those really good suburbs where you've got those affluent sort of families and couples that are wanting to be close to that CBD and still have that Australian dream of the big home and land and a nice big pool. So we are looking at a lot of those pockets and seeing a lot of those pockets emerge. So for sure.
And so obviously you do multiple projects at a time. What sort of capacity do you have? And are you thinking about expanding, or are you just taking it, slowly?
Look, on the tail end of COVID there, like 2022, we sort of retracted a bit. Obviously, it was quite difficult for a lot of builders. Like I mentioned before, we had a number of projects that we, basically broke even on. I think we worked for about 2 or 3 years through COVID there and made, basically nothing in the build entity. And, we did one project of our own and we're quite successful with that, more so than doing, 3 or 4 client projects.
Yeah.
So, we definitely want to, I guess, look at doing more of our own developments, moving forward, and that's sort of the goal for us there. But
So just have multiple of your own projects.
Yeah, ideally, I guess I don't want to be too busy. Like COVID was stressful and busy for everyone, but like I said before, I want to try and get a team in place. We had a lot of great chippies, and I'm still good mates with them to this day. One of my apprentices that I put through his whole trade, he's now a firefighter, and I had him out on site the other day helping out because he does 4 days on, 4 days off. He's got a lot of free time on his hand, but we had an awesome team. The boys were great. I think I attribute a lot of us, being successful, and I say successful in, obviously there's a high insolvency rate with builders at the moment.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I see us being successful by not being insolvent.
Definitely,
and still being here to this day. So I definitely attribute a lot of our business to the boys that we had. We worked really hard through COVID. We did a lot of hours and a lot of work, and I attribute it to that team. So I definitely don't want to get too busy like that. I don't want to be as busy as we were in that time. So I think 2 to 4 projects a year would be the sweet spot for us. And look at, some of the designs and projects we do are quite custom and detailed. So I think it's definitely going to be beneficial to have a team back in place again. So I am looking at trying to get a competent supervisor in place, and then, maybe towards the end of the year or early next year when we get another few sites, I'd like to get, maybe a project manager on board. So definitely want to try and get a good reputable team together again, and keep those projects rolling and bringing that product to the market. So,
and are you just going to continue with the single story, just single homes, or are you going to diversify into, say, subdivisions and things like that as well?
Yeah, look, we have had a few subdivision sites come to us. It's definitely not something, and look, I'll be honest, it's not something that I have a lot of experience with. I have a lot of experience with consultants, traditional properties and layers and things like that. And like, I can definitely get a custom, knockdown build or a raise and renovation project designed and to site and built, quite competently. But I don't have a huge amount of experience in subdivisions. Not to say I wouldn't rule that off our radar. But look, a splitter would be great, but every man and his dog knows they have a splitter box. In this day and age,
everyone wants one.
I mean, a little goal, like, I guess down the track in say 3 to 5 years, I wouldn't mind doing like a small scale, multi-residential project. And something maybe with like a commercial aspect at the bottom, like some shops or whatever, that we could retain, some units or the commercial aspect for some positive cash flow. But I think, down the track, I wouldn't mind getting into some multi-res. I'd like to try and get a few investment properties or like a holiday style property. But I would like to, I guess, mix it up a bit. Obviously having ADHD, I can't sit still for 5 minutes. So
it's sort of good in its own way, right? It has its positives and negatives.
So I definitely would like to, I guess, get some growth. But I think for the next sort of 2 to 3 years, I think we'll try and aim for, 2 to 4 builds, high-end builds a year, and slowly build that growth up. So
and before, when we were talking off the pod, you mentioned that you were interested in, potentially getting a place down here on the Gold Coast and, Hedges Avenue and these sorts of places, maybe down the line a little bit further. But
maybe a bit further back.
Could you ever see yourself doing a project down here?
Oh, look, I love the coast. Like I mentioned, my nan owned two apartments in Kira, one in behind the old Kira Bakery and one up on Kira Hill.
Yeah.
It's funny, you know, she'd say to us every now and then, she actually owned an apartment underneath Joel Parkinson's. It was Joel Parkinson's mum.
Oh, right.
And she'd sort of, you know, tell us, oh, they were a bit loud last night, or, you know,
Yeah.
so, you know, I grew up down there surfing a lot and like, you
Yeah.
know, like cruising up and down the Superbank on weekends. So yeah, I love it on the coast. I you know, grew up when I was young down here, you know, visiting my nan. So I have a I guess a connection there with the coast, and I'd love to, I guess, live on the coast at some point. But like I
Yeah.
said, it's hard when you know, you put your roots down in Brisbane, you've got family and friends and things like that. So
Yeah.
I think at some point, you know, my wife and I would love a holiday home or a place like on the Gold Coast or on the sunny coast.
Yeah.
But something close to the water. You know, I used to surf quite a bit, and probably haven't got it on the board in, you know, 2 years
Been a
or
minute.
something. So
Yeah,
I
fair
don't even know
enough.
if I could paddle. I don't think my shoulders have got it in
Yeah.
it anymore. But,
Yeah, fair enough. Nice. Well, yeah, it's definitely a good spot.
Mm.
And I guess, you know, you're still very early days in your journey, but, you know, looking back all the way to where you are today, what are you most proud of?
Oh, that's I don't think I've actually looked back and
Yeah.
you know, I think it's good for people to do that. Like I definitely don't enough. Like I definitely don't
Yeah.
pull the brakes and just, you know, sit in that moment. But you know, like I think yeah, like with the business, like, you know, I think creating a building company, like I hustled. And you know, one of my suppliers, you know, Troy from Metro Skips, like he, you know, I chat with him quite a bit on the phone, but he often, you know, pulls me back to reality and just says, dude, like you've done quite well, you know, like you're,
Yeah.
you know, 5, 6, 7 years into your building company, and you know, you're doing, you
Big
know,
things.
$1 million homes, you know,
Mm.
and I think in our third year we probably secured, you know, a number of, we're probably doing 2 to 4 like $800,000 or $900,000 contracts a year.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, on that, like I hustled a lot in those early years, and I think, you know, looking back on that, you know, I think I'm proud of, you know, creating that business from nothing to, you know, turning over $3 or $4 million in the second or third year.
Yeah.
Which obviously these days probably isn't much, but you know, 3 or 4 years ago, to do that in a building company was, you know, was not bad, you know.
Yeah, I think it's a huge milestone just to be able to make it to that next level, and to break out of doing client work and into your own projects is a huge step, right?
Yeah. So
All right. Well, look, mate, it's been great having you on. And where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
if they want to get in touch, look, feel free to, you know, flick me an email. You know, I'm happy to like help anyone out who's trying to, you know, grow something or get out. But, you know, just shoot an email over at info@mitconbuild.com, and, you know, happy to help if anyone wants to ask any questions or anything. So
Amazing. Thanks
cool.
for coming.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers.